Well, the time has come, and Kings Island is officially open for the 2026 season. Don and I were on hand for opening weekend, and this is what we saw. Hello, everybody. Alongside Don Helbig, I'm Ryan Sir, and this is Tower Topics.
New episodes of Tower Topics, they drop 3 times a week, so you can listen wherever you get your podcast, watch on YouTube, and be sure to hit that subscribe button. So, Ryan, Kings Island now open for the 2026 season, and as you and I navigated our way around the park opening weekend, we certainly noticed a few different things out there. What are some of the things that stood out for you?
Well, the highlight, of course, was Phantom Theater opening Nightmare, and there's going to be a link in the description for our video on that. We're not going to concentrate on that for that one. But there were some good and some bad. It was definitely a mixed bag. Let's start with the positive, and that's that we had a lot of doubts with this, but the Monster reopened. I don't think it was open at all on Friday, but it opened, or no, it opened Friday evening,
night.
I think.
Yeah, Friday evening, a little after 7, maybe 7:30 range. It was open. Maintenance was doing some test runs with it. I think this really, tip of the hat to the maintenance department, because they, it was getting late in the evening. They could have waited until Saturday to open it. They didn't. They got it open. It was great to see the Monster in action again, especially as it got darker, toward the end of the night. And it just really, enhanced Coney Mall like it has, since 1972. So it was really good to see the Monster back in operation.
Okay. Now let's sandwich good with bad. Let's make a sandwich with it. And I'm going to pull up a graphic because we had so many people send us pictures of portion sizes. And what's funny is, okay, you look at all these here, the one on the left, it's 2 ice cream cones that look like novelty ice cream. And they said they spent $14 on it. A tiny rib portion and a little thing of macaroni. It seemed like there were a lot of problems at Coney Barbecue. If you look directly below it, if you're not watching on YouTube, you're totally losing out what I'm saying on it. But it's fried potato work, Rivertown Potato Works, much smaller portion, and then on the right the chicken from Grain and Grill, that just looks like kind of a sad portion. I ate at Chicken Shack, and the chicken was small and it was sad, but that's kind of been the story for the past 2 years with the chicken. But I wouldn't say that my portions were like noticeably smaller than previous years. And I also ate at Panda, and it was fine too. Of course, they only have one. You only get one entree instead of 2 now, which they changed last year, I think. What was your experience with this?
Well, first of all, I had several people, sending me the pictures. One guy that actually physically showed me his plate, about with how many, the size of the chicken tenders that he got from Chicken Shack.
Yeah.
And basically the 3 little pieces would have equaled like 1 last year. We really were concerned about portion sizes this year because we'd seen the reports out of Carowinds and seen the reports out of King's Dominion, that they had really, cut back. I was seeing pictures from people sending me of La Rosa's pizza, where what would have been a slice before was considered now 2 slices, so maybe instead of cutting it up into, 8 pieces, they cut it up into 10 now or something. But definitely reduced on that. I know my daughter at Panda Express, they had the 2 entrees last year. Now it's 1, and they were out of, everything else that came as a side except for one thing. So that was a little bit of disappointment for her. So I don't know what's going on there. You get, those that kind of defend it on social media, and they'll say, well, you got the dining plan. What do you expect? You're getting it for free. Well, no, you're not getting it for free. You spent $100 and something for your dining plan, with it. So you can't make that an excuse for it. So it's really disappointing to see what we were seeing out of King's Dominion and Carowinds, has made its way to Kings Island with the portion sizes, it looks like. I know there was a sign in, I want to say it was Coney Barbecue, where it specifically said you get 1 scoop of mac and cheese, so it was kind of noted. that you're only getting that. So I don't know if that was there for the guest or it was there to remind the employees. I don't know, what it was. A lot of issues, I heard in the brew house with the wait time, the quality of the food, bringing food out that was missing some of the things that were supposed to go with it, on their burger or BLT, asking to get, what they paid for, what they ordered, brought out. And it took another 20, 30 minutes to bring that out. I heard that the line was backed up because they didn't have enough of the pagers. So they had to hold the line up until another pager came back, little things like that. So you would expect that to be a little more organized with it. So, food and beverage was something that, I noticed. I ended up getting, because I wanted, after seeing pictures, people coming up to me and telling me about it, I wanted to, get something that I knew I could count on. And a couple of things that, the people I were with, we were talking about was, well, we know what we, Skyline Chili's still going to be pretty consistent probably. But also, the line wasn't very long at Tom and Chi, so we got that. At Tom and Chi, you can count on the portion size being the same every time you go. It's
Right.
going to be consistent. It's going to be good. So if I find, in future visits that, the chicken tenders, are reduced in size, or they've lessened the quality of the meat, some of the burgers, just different things like that, or the pizza, what used to be, one slice is now two. I will spend more time at Tom and Chi because I know that it's going to be consistent and it's going to be good. So we have that going for us that we can do that. But it's just really, of all the things on opening weekend, that seemed to be the roughest point. You see a lot of on social media, a lot of comments about, give them a break. It's the first day of the season. Might be their first job. Yeah, it might be, but it's inexcusable. There was never a time, in the early years where it was like that, 72 for maybe the first 45 years or whatever of the park, was ready to go on opening day. Now it's an excuse. People are giving him the excuse, and that allows that to happen year after year, well, they're still going to come back. We don't have to worry about it if they're not ready to go yet, if they're not fully trained yet. Shouldn't be like that. The culture isn't like that in other chains. You do see it through the Six Flags parks. You're not seeing it elsewhere. When the park opens, they're ready to go at other parks, so it feels like it's the middle of June or July in operations with these other parks with food and beverage. Not so with Kings Island and some of the other Six Flags parks. And the excuse is always, well, it's their first job. Well, it's the first day. You got to pack your patience and stuff. You shouldn't have to. This is a big time amusement park. If they want to be considered one of the finest in the country, they got to step up their game and have that part of the operation, ready to roll when the season opens.
Yeah. So I feel like every year we start seeing this and we're like, oh God, look how much they cut down the portions. And then by the second weekend, they're, with the love of God, they actually make them like normal again. Do you think that maybe this is first day stuff, first weekend stuff, and then they learn their lesson? Or do you think that they try to get away with it every year and then there's backlash and then they're like, all right, 2 scoops of macaroni, my God.
Backlash. Yeah, I think there's a lot of backlash with it because we're still seeing this, this year, I don't know, because we're still seeing the same thing, out of the Carowinds and the Kings Dominion groups, that there's a lot of, you're still going to get their defenders, with it, but there's still a lot saying, you got the dining plan. What do you expect? And it's just not something that you should see. And they should really invest in making sure that the training that these associates get, it maybe the first day, but make sure they're ready on their first day. And if that means bringing them in earlier and doing more dry runs and things with them, that's what you got to do. The guest expectation, we're paying good money for our season passes. We're paying good money for the dining plans. We shouldn't have to like get a lesser, experience just because they weren't ready to go.
Yeah. And I kind of feel bad. Well, let me tell you an anecdote. This isn't food related, but There was a kid, and it was clearly his first day, probably his first job. We're trying to get photos at Snoopy Soapbox Racers. The person in front of us um, didn't have fun pics. They didn't understand the concept of it. They wanted to get the photo. They wanted to know the difference between the daily fun picks and the season long. They want to know how much they costed and stuff. This person's dealing with that, along with like, hey, R says that we have to see, we have to see an associate. I guess needed to be activated, and the associate, like, thank God, like the supervisor happened to walk up because their eyes were welling up. They were clearly like overwhelmed. They were about to start crying. And I feel like with better training, like they kind of like left them out. Like, why would you have a person working alone in this booth who doesn't know this stuff and can't deal with big crowds yet, and doesn't know what to do if things don't work perfectly, or doesn't know what to do if two people asking questions at the same time? Like, what? Like, why would you not pair that person up with a supervisor? There were 3 supervisors walking around. Like, why wouldn't you just stick one at each place just to make sure that the person who's 15 or 16 years old is good and ready to go, so they actually show up next weekend? I felt bad for the kid. We were talking to him afterward, and we were like, "Hey, you're doing great, man. Like, we're not mad, we're not frustrated. The other person got taken care of. You're doing awesome." So ended up being a feel good thing. But like, what if somebody had gotten frustrated and started yelling? Like, the kid would never have shown up on Sunday.
No,
But
no. The other thing about it too is, what might be their first day is that they've changed it the last, couple years in terms of how they're hiring associates
Mhm.
now. That they don't bring them in for the face-to-face interviews, and a decision is made there. They get hired. They just fill out this, online. They get hired. They get assigned. So nobody really has much of a say in it. Now, if it's a full-time position, a little bit different. But for the seasonals, uh, then they're getting people that if you sat down and you interviewed them, the supervisors and managers doing the interview, they would know that this person maybe not cut out, to work in that department, and by doing it the way they're doing it, people get miscast around the park, and it gets the season off to a rough start.
And it's no favor to them. That's my big concern with, like, because I have a tendency to shop out of the pocket of somebody that, like, I can come tomorrow, who cares? But um from my standpoint, it's like, okay, if we didn't get the photo, whatever, but this kid is going through hell, and it was because of terrible mismanagement. They, again, if you're not going to have like the dry run days and stuff, like, I understand that's expensive. If you can't do that, that's fine, but don't leave them alone the first weekend. Like, have a supervisor or somebody there with them instead of wandering around the park. Assign one to each thing. Like, that's the smart thing to do. But the supervisors came in, they saved the day, and this kid was okay, but they almost lost an associate just because I feel like the whole thing was mismanaged.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, you got to, you know, really look at the training and kind of make that a priority and give them more time to learn before you throw them out there in a live situation. And there's no way, that somebody that can come in for one weekend and you kind of do a walkthrough with it, and then you put them behind the registered, park's open, 30,000 people want to eat. It's a no-win situation for the associate. You need to give them more time and really invest in that training. And that's not something that we've seen to start the season off the past couple of years with it. But, I think food and beverage, it just, there was a lot of things that, saw, heard, people sending us stuff that, had you kind of shaking your head about it. Now, another experience Friday was cutting the hours at some of the restaurants. So toward the end of the evening, they're not open, a lot of
Mm.
places. So you get down to where you got Chicken Shack, you got La Rosa's, you got Skyline, pretty much that you could get from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock to get something to eat, which made the lines outrageous at each of those locations. So that was another thing that I noticed, was just that it's, if you have the dining plan and you want to use it a second time, do it before 7 o'clock, 7:30, or you're going to maybe wait in an hour line.
Yeah, I should note when I went to Chicken Shack, the reason why I agreed to go there is because I really wanted the chicken sandwich. It was on the menu, but they didn't have any. And the girl told me that they no longer sell it. Um, which I, from what I understand, is not true. I think that they ran out of buns or chicken patties or something. But I get okay, first day stuff or whatever, but the people doing ordering and stuff like that are not. It's not their first day. It's not their first barbecue. So it's a lot of it's inexcusable. But yeah, anyway, let's move on. So next up, we have a renovated KI Essentials. So I thought this looked really good. I thought it looked classy. I like the Eiffel Tower kind of theme to it more than I thought I was going to. Um, is it revolutionarily different as far as the products are concerned in there? No, not really at all. But I think that it breathes some good life into it.
Yeah, the way it looks, it's a nice touch. So I think that really, it just looks better. It feels better. So they did a nice job with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy with how that turned out. Let's see here. Next up. Oh, there's a picture of you. I don't know why you wanted me to include that.
Paparazzi was out in full force. People taking pictures and that. It's I got sent that and I thought, okay, it's opening day. Here we go.
Yeah, that's where it starts. Let's see.
Got a
So
new fast lane entrance for the Beast.
that's what I was looking for. The Beast, yeah, the Beast got a new fast lane entrance, which kind of thank God because is this right? Oh, it's sideways. That's fine. So you enter through kind of like through the main entrance now, right?
And then it takes you a different way. So you're not going up kind of on the exit side like you did before. You kind of go in with the people that you did before. But it's I didn't ride the Beast. I had people that sent me some photos of it, described it to me. Beast was down, most of the day on Friday, so I didn't get a chance to ride. But I think that's from what I was told by those that did get the ride. They find it to be more efficient with the new fast lane entrance.
Well, I really always kind of hated the whole thing of going up the exit because that narrows down so often, and it's not a good experience to use. I wonder if that has more capacity in terms of like during Haunt last year, I waited in line. Well, no, I was gonna wait in line, but the fast lane line was all the way back to the photo booth going up the exit.
Yeah.
So I wonder if this has more capacity or if it's just like more logistical,
I think it's more logistical than anything else. Big fast lane throughout the park, just because of what they did in terms of allowing, everybody to upgrade to prestige at a very low price, and everybody gets that single use fast lane. So that's going to make fast lane around the park. There's a lot of rides. It's going to be about 45 minutes to an hour, so it's not going to be so fast.
Yeah, it's going to be more like lane than fast lane. That was one of the reasons why I didn't fight it so much when it came to like going to fast lane for Phantom Theater opening nightmare, because I was like, well, everybody's going to be in that line. And it seems like that kind of was the case, but I could have waited an hour as opposed to 3 hours had I done that. But it's whatever. It's part of the experience. Now you can tell your kids and grandkids you waited 3 hours for that ride. I waited about that long for like Flight of Fear when that first came out. So it's totally fine in my regard. Did you notice anything like merchandise wise that you liked?
I thought they had some really nice Phantom Theater merchandise in the Coney, or not the Coney, but the Emporium on International Street.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that there was some cool merchandise there. They had some, in the window display, drew us in. We were walking by it because of the way it looked, but they had some nice merchandise there. I didn't really get to look as much as I wanted to at some of the other stores. I wanted to check out like the Diamondback Trading Post to see what was in there. I wanted to go over Coaster Connection and Action Zone, so really didn't get a chance to do a lot of that because by the time I got out of Phantom Theater, it was like 2:30 on Friday. We got there right when it opened at 11, but by the time I got out, 2:30, and then it's time to eat, and then you ride some other rides in that, and your day is over already. So I didn't get a chance to really look as thoroughly as I wanted to, but I did like what I saw
Mhm.
on International Street.
Yeah, this is just an example of a tie-dye Phantom Theater shirt. There's a blanket that has the Phantom Theater logo on it that's kind of calling my name that I haven't gotten yet. They have like 3 new Phantom Theater Opening Nightmare pins that I'm going to get for this bad boy here, to start to fill that out. So I'm excited about that. They had a bunch of people were kind of like up in arms about some AI, clearly AI created merchandise. And honestly, I think they're right to be. It looks like crap. But that's like one line of the stuff. The rest of the merchandise that was new was really good. They got some good Beast stuff. They got a Diamondback, a Beast, a Blue Ice Cream, and I think an Eiffel Tower Hawaiian shirts now. I'll send you a picture of that because I know that you'd be very interested in that. But those all look really cool. So I think it's good merchandise this year. We'll do a whole episode on the merchandise that's new for 2026.
Yeah.
Sometimes they bring out more stuff, especially like a couple weeks into the season for late arrivals. They did have a Flight of Fear 30th anniversary shirt. As we kind of predicted, they did not have a Carousel 100th anniversary shirt or anything like that. That's disappointing, but I feel like maybe they didn't realize that till later, so we'll see that maybe in June or July.
I did notice they went all out on the carousel, making sure that everybody knew they were celebrating it by putting a real small number 100 on one of the horses.
Yeah, but if that was a full-size horse, that 100 would be huge.
Yeah, so they went all out. I expected, as I was approaching the ride, I expected to see, maybe there'd be some signage or something, something they're recognizing it, that it's 100 years this year, but nope, just on one of the horses, it just had on this little saddle side of it, just 100, so, yeah, that was a little bit disappointing.
So, okay, if they did that, the horse looks good, and they didn't. When I first saw it, because I did ride the carousel, because I channeled my inner Don. I read the carousel, and I was afraid they painted over the 50th horse to do that, which they did not, because the 50th is still my favorite horse.
Yeah, 50 still looks good. All the horses look really good. I think in that regard, the ride looks spectacular. For its 100, they put a lot of work into it over the off season. You could tell, a lot of painting, and that around it. So I really, really liked what they did there to make sure they spruced it up for the 100th anniversary. Is just that if you didn't know it was the 100th anniversary, you wouldn't know, because there's nothing really there outside that little small 100 that says anything about that.
So this
should be celebrated big time, because you only turn 100 once.
Right. So I would say that if they did the 100 horse, that in combination with good quality signage with accurate information that's not made by AI, and if they sold a horse figurine like the one that you have, that is of that 100th horse, I'd be totally fine with that. And then maybe a T-shirt with it.
I can find that horse. Hold on one second.
You usually have it on your right side. I think that's where you grab it from.
I don't know. Oh, here it is. I do have it. Tearing everything else out to get it. Just knocked over my Bucky bobblehead.
Yeah, if they sold something like that, if that was $100, I would buy it.
Yeah,
$100.
You'd buy that. So, I would too.
For $100, especially if it was the 50th horse, you better believe I would buy that. Make it a limited run. Make, I don't know, 500 of them or something. They'd last the whole season for $100, But I think that there's money to be made there. But I think that would be a good celebration, because they don't have the manpower to do a 20-minute documentary on the carousel. They just don't have that, But I still think that we should celebrate the 100th anniversary of the we should do something like maybe come up with a 15-minute documentary on the history of the carousel or something. I think that would be fun to do. But let us know in the comments. Would you buy the horse that Don showed? Like, if that was $100, say the 50th anniversary horse painted up like that, and then maybe there's 500 of them or 200 of them or something. Like, I would so be a buyer.
Yeah, I would think just even a T-shirt shouldn't be that hard to get. That just has, put put a picture of the Grand Carousel on a
Oh,
T-shirt.
what if Tower Topic sold that? What Tower Top? Let's collaborate with Alan, and we'll get like a painting of the carousel and put it on a T-shirt, and we'll sell that. And we'll put 100 years. There'll be a collab with them. Let's do something like that. Let's do something like that. Okay. So the other thing that was new was the Prestige lot was expanded. So it's kind of weird because it's not just bigger now. There's like 2 of them. So for all you Space Mountain fans, this is the trend I'm trying to start. I think the one on the right should be the Alpha lot, and the one on the left should be the Omega lot. And then no, I take that back. It would be the other way around. Alpha's on the left, Omega's on the right. Okay, so we've been talking about like the new lot, the Alpha lot on the left. That one, they sealed it, they sprayed it. It's still like pretty bad with potholes and stuff.
Oh yeah.
But that's not even the biggest thing that kind of irritated me over the weekend. The biggest thing that irritated me was at like 7 or 8 o'clock, they just closed it. They put cones up and blocked the entrance. So I guess when they pull the park, because they used to pull the attendant out whenever they would pull the parking people. So 7 or 8 o'clock, or sorry, 8 or 9 o'clock when they close at 10. I guess they did that now, and now they just close it. So not only is there not a lot of opportunities to park there sometimes because of how many Prestige Pass holders they have, but also if you don't show up by 2 hours before the park closes, they just close the lot. On Friday they closed it because it was full. I understand that. On Saturday it was not full. It was a terrible day on Saturday weather-wise, but they just closed it when they didn't want to pay the person anymore. It's like either automate it or have the person out there, because you're just screwing over people,
Well, yeah, we're supposed to get access to that as a Prestige Pass holder, and there shouldn't be, our employee left by the time you got there as an excuse for not allowing you to park there. If there's space there, even if you get there at 8:30 at night, you should be able to park there.
Yeah.
That's what's part of your season pass package. That was one of the incentives to buy it. So they need to really take a look at that. One of the other things, Ryan, that I noticed around the park, a lot of dark theaters, no shows. They did bring out in the outside act, Hi-Fi Honey, and that's fine and everything. But in terms of, the live entertainment lineup, Bandstand, dark. Kings Island Theater, dark. Showplace Theater, dark. And that's, a sad look. And there's a lot of guests that they're not riders. They come to the park because they like the shows. And I was talking to a long time season pass holder, saw her in the sweet spot, and she was lamenting that there were no shows and that there's nothing for her to do because she doesn't ride rides. And she's right. So they look at it as a cost savings. They don't like the word budget cuts, but they look at it as a cost savings not to have entertainment on all these theaters throughout the season. So you have a guest like the one I was talking to. There's not a lot, there's nothing for her to do in the spring. And then for big parts of the summer, there's not going to be a lot for her to do. There might be, 3 weeks that you're going to have Brad Ross in the KI Theater, unless they bring something in after him. You just don't have the entertainment lineup that you did. So there's really nothing that you're offering these guests for a good portion of the season, which is going to end up making them not renew their season passes, in the years to come, just because it's no longer worth their time. They buy it hopeful that they'll go back to how it always used to be. 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, where, entertainment from April, at least through Labor Day, not anymore. So, I understood where she was coming from with that. It's something that, for me, I would love to see live shows throughout the season. I'd like to see a commitment to that. But that was something I noticed too, that, another year has begun and another year, there's the early part of the season. There's just nothing to do for those non-riders.
Yeah. Now, the thing that I thought was most strange about that, because we've come to expect this nonsense, because I remember under like Prime Cedar Fair, it was the bandstand. No, it was Fest House show and the kids show always open with the park. Unfortunately, like you said, those days are over, but they lost the opportunity to have, like, I guess, the press release for these new shows because they're advertising them in the park. It looks like Hollywood Hits Top 40 is going to open May 23rd. That's in the Fest House. And then um, the Showplace just has a Kings Island logo, but I know that we all know that All Wheels Extreme is contracted for another year, so they might be doing the same show as last year. And then, Hot Rhythm Nights, which we've seen before. I think that was the Carnival show for a couple years. That opens May 23rd. That's, I think, going to be on the bandstand.
But they only go until like August 10th range. It's not like they go all the way through Labor Day, so there's still going to be dark days again. It's just disappointing for a lot of, Kings Island guests that enjoy the shows that there's only, select portions of the season where they get to do that. And that was one of the things that really stuck out to me, on Season Pass Preview Day, was just seeing, all the theaters dark.
Yeah, that was kind of disappointing, but I mean, you upset enough people, and it's one of those things like, okay, I want to say this. I want to point this out. This is off script, of course, but remember how I told you that, like, having trees and stuff like that, you don't sell a ticket to the park by having trees. But what it is, if there's shade and stuff like that, then people don't think of the park as, oh, we went there, it was 95 degrees and it was so hot and the lines were so long. Like, if it's pleasant, then people's attitudes kind of reflect it. And Matt We Met posted something very similar to that, where what did he call it? It was like scenic-tainment. I don't remember the phrase he used, but he was kind of like echoing it, where it's like, no, there is no way you can like monetize like having trees and having shade and having things look nice or whatever, but it does make a big difference. You talk about added value, and I think that's absolutely true, but I think that it's not even about added value where people feel like they didn't get ripped off. I think it's more along the lines of, did people go and were they miserable? Like, so for example, my mom hasn't been to Kings Island in, since I was little, so decades. She hates the place. And it's probably because she thinks of it as it's so hot there and there's nothing but lines and there's people running everywhere and stuff. So, you do things to mitigate those. And while you can't sell tickets saying, come see our new trees, when the people are sitting on those benches while the kids are playing or whatever, they're going to have a better time and they're going to, do that sort of thing. But, I guess when you're a desperate company with desperate people and you're a little small minded, like Six Flags has a tendency to be, this is the result you get.
Yep. I also noticed, Ryan, that I thought security did a really good job, in making sure that, the chaperone policy seems to, at least on, Friday, they seem to be looking for that, making sure that, kids were together, hey, where's your chaperone? So I thought they did a nice job of managing that. I thought the park looked clean. It didn't look like they were, shorthanded or anything with trash cans overflowing. I might have missed, some of those if it was happening, but it looked to me that, up and down International Street throughout the park, there wasn't, trash on the tables, that, they did a nice job keeping the park looking clean. And I thought for an opening day, a lot of things looked like they were ready to go.
They did. The freestyles over in Coney Mall, I did check those out, and there's like special Powerade, like sour flavors that were pretty good. But I will tell you that I made the mistake of bringing up like, hey, we should have everybody like tweet at the park when they have the bar open and no one's there, but the Coke Freestyle thing behind it's closed. And I had about probably 7 people come up to me like, hey, you're not going to believe this, but that bar is open, but the Freestyle's closed and no one's at the bar. All right. Do you have any more thoughts, Don?
No, I just excited to have the season, underway. There is a lot, to look forward to this year, with Phantom Theater opening Nightmare. You've got the Grand Carousel, 100, even if they're not going to do a great job, celebrating it. It's still, a special year for the carousel for guests to enjoy. The new merchandise, for Phantom Theater looks amazing. They got some, events coming up. We've got the Food and Wine Festival. We'll be here before we know it. So we'll be talking about that. Soak City Water Park will be opening, soon. So the season flies by fast. You look at the calendar, we're already, more than midway through through April rather, as this episode drops. So, it's going to go fast. So make sure that, you visit the park early and, you visit it often, because before you know it, another season is in the books.
I feel like we go to daily operations quickly, and we do go to daily operations very quickly, and you blink and we're at 8:00 closes, so that's sad. So I tell you what, with Winterfest and everything, and I've discussed this on the show before as well. The season is so long now that I'm kind of like over it by the end of the season. And even sometimes, like, with opening day, I feel like I was just there. This year, especially with Phantom Theater, I felt like when I was like 20 again, when I first started getting involved with Kings Island, when I was just counting down the time until, I had to get up super early to get stuff done to make sure I was at the park by noon. So I haven't felt that way. If it weren't for Phantom Theater, I probably would have had the same attitudes before. It's like, well, they open at noon. That means the tolls are going to be busy until 1. I'll show up at 2. Not this time. Not this time. Right. Let's move on to the comments of the day. Now, Don, we got, to be clear about my intentions list, we got 1 million comments of waited 3 hours to my family for Phantom Theater, worth it for every second. A lot of positive things. This person had some critiques, and I thought those would be interesting to kind of like dive into this a little bit. I don't agree with what they had to say, but they have some interesting thoughts. But he said, Eddie6198 said, I get the OG Phantom Theater was maybe a little too on the scary side for kids, but they went too hard into the kid-friendly direction with this remake, and the sets look like cardboard.
Okay. I can understand, everybody's got their opinions on things, but this is a really good attraction. It's an elite, top tier level dark ride, and it's at Kings Island, which makes me excited about it, because for years we've had to go elsewhere to get a top tier dark ride experience. So I'm glad that it's at Kings Island. But I wouldn't say that it's too kid friendly now. I think it's the right mix. It's kind of the characters, they're fun. When you look at them, I don't find them to be too kid friendly. I mean, they're family friendly, but I don't look at it as they're just for kids. I look at it as it's for guests of all ages. But I do appreciate the comment.
Yeah, and we brought this up before. And I remember debating this when I saw the characters, especially when the IAPA stuff came out, and it's like they look too cartoonish. But I really think that these characters are the exact same characters represented with today's technology. Exactly. I feel like the Maestro and all these characters looked creepier in '92 when they came out, because animatronics were a lot creepier in '92 than they are now. Yeah, I wholeheartedly disagree with it being too kid friendly. There's jump scares and stuff. It was never intended to be super friendly. It was always supposed to be a little bit goofy. They were ripping off Haunted Mansion, and Haunted Mansion definitely that was an internal debate of, do we make it scary or do we make it funny? And that was right around the time Walt died, so they kind of just went with a compromise. But they were trying to do it so it was definitely scary, but it was like not realistic. And I think that I love the animatronics in this. I think they look great. I'm so glad the characters are back. I'm so glad they went with this. Yeah. Let's tackle the sets. Look like cardboard. I wish I knew more about which sets you disliked, because I thought the sets looked strikingly familiar to the original Phantom Theater, like in too. Quality and set design and so on.
Yeah, I thought so too, Ryan. I don't understand that part. So, if you're listening to this episode, certainly come back with another comment and let us know, exactly what you're talking about there with them looking like cardboard. Like, what specific scenes look like cardboard? I thought Boo Blasters look like cardboard. This certainly does not. This is definitely an upgrade over Boo Blasters on Boo Hill.
I have. Have you met anybody yet that was like, "This is okay, but I really miss Boo Blasters"?
No,
That's when they instantly have security there, and they hold them until the mental ward shows up and
no, this
and
is an
comes and takes them
outstanding
away.
ride. Like I said, again, this is, we're fortunate to have this type of a dark ride at Kings Island again. It's been since Phantom Theater, the original, that we had something this good and something to be excited about. If you're a non-roller coaster fan, you're going to love this ride, and you're going to want to do it over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, we're so behind the curtain, pun intended. We're recording this on a Sunday. We normally record on Wednesday, but we shifted around a little bit because we wanted to be able to talk about Phantom Theater and opening weekend and so on. So we're doing this late. So again, I mean, when I rode Diamondback, when I rode Mystic Timbers and stuff, it's like, okay, I've done it. I'm looking forward to riding it again, but it's not like I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But I'm already counting down the days until like, okay, I can go back on Friday and ride this again. So I'm getting myself worked out. When I was going through the footage, I'm working on some shorts and stuff for Tower Topics YouTube channel. And I pulled some stills and so on for, the thumbnails and stuff. And I was just getting giddy again, watching the footage of the ride, finding more stuff that I liked. And I'm just so glad that we have this. It's exactly what I wanted. Yeah, it might have exceeded my expectations. I will say the ride itself is what I wanted. We had the Pepper's Ghost discussion on the last episode where that's the one. If there's one thing like I wish they had brought back, that's it. Okay, that's totally fine. Besides that, the ride totally meets expectations, and I had very high expectations, and the gameplay exceeds expectations. I think that it works better than I thought. We never talked about issues with the gameplay. Let's touch on that really quickly. So I rode it 3 times. Nobody in any of my parties had any issues with the flashlights. You had some people that told you that they did.
They had trouble with it, and they said the flashlights didn't work. I tend to think that might be they didn't know how to use it as much as it didn't work because, we would see that be more widespread if there was an issue.
Well, it's funny because I had a friend of mine that's from Texas was just texting me a second ago, and he's at the park right now. And I was like, well, when you ride Boo Blast, when you ride Phantom Theater, let me know. And he said they rode it twice and the flashlights didn't work well. They were glitchy the second time. And I'm not exactly sure what he means by that. I will tell you one weird thing that happened to me was I got stopped at a section. And we're getting, it's kind of like in Boo Blasters when you stop in front of a target and you keep on hitting it. Well, we're hitting all these nodes. It was me and Noah, the field reporter, and all of a sudden my flashlight changed to a different color. And then when I went to the next scene, it was back to the correct color. It was a strange thing. There's also like every once in a while you get lag and stuff. But for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's very similar to the technology for Minion Blast at Universal. I honestly think it works better, though, at least as it stands now, with just being a couple days old. With Minion Blast, you have like a crossfire thing that points at the screen, and it's always so far off from where you're aiming. This one, the flashlight, at least gives you the illusion that it is where it's supposed to be. So,
yeah, I mean, there might be a few that, had some flashlights that, didn't work or something, but it wasn't a widespread thing from what I could tell from talking to people who rode it, and then looking through the different comments on social media, and that you're not seeing a lot of that out there. And then, some of them come back and say, well, the second time they rode it, they figured out how to use it, so maybe that was
how do they not know how to use it? It's got one button and you point it.
I don't know.
Well, you know what? The thing that I was wondering about the flashlight stuff, because I was like, if everybody's got a flashlight, like, won't that kind of ruin the ride? But the flashlight doesn't, it lights up, but it doesn't like emit a beam. So I think what they were doing was they were holding up their flashlight against their hand and it wasn't putting a beam on it. So they thought the flashlight didn't work.
Correct. Yeah,
I think that's quite possible. But nonetheless, the gameplay is legitimately fun. I want to have this gripe. This is so funny. The maximum score you can get is 9,999. To be a theater owner, which is like a Master Blaster, you have to get that score. You literally have to break the game in order to get the top score. You can't exceed that score. It just stops at that point. Which, by the way, with their a lot of people have been getting that. I think I got in the 600,000 to 700,000 range every time I wrote it. But I don't know, man. We'll talk more about Phantom Theater in the future.
Yes, we will.
Let's thank our beloved Prestige members. I want to give a big shout out to Miss Mandy, 1983, Lil Mac, 21, Brian Hauser, 330T, Aaron Bort, Jacob Fix, Damon Barnes, Dakota Cole, Eric Grau, Gibson Hills, Connor Wheeler, Dustin Jackson, Songstress Miku, Medic 302, Eastern Coaster, Guys and Girls, Justin Y, Mike Garrett, Galaxy B-Boy, Greggy Rocks, Kayla La, T Cleveland, Tim Dwelly, Sun Fun Sarah, and Ian Ross. Thank you guys so much for supporting Tower Topics at the highest level. That's the prestige level. If you want to be involved in Tower Topics, there's a link in the description. Members get early access to the videos, exclusive content, exclusive live streams, and some tiers even get a free t-shirt. So hit that link if you're interested. If you haven't sent me your information yet, please do. All prestige and gold members, please, hosts at towertopics.com, HOSTS at towertopics.com, your name, your YouTube username that I read off here, your shipping address, and your t-shirt size would be greatly, greatly appreciated. I'm Ryan. That's Don. 2026 is officially here. This is Tower Topics.